Now, another thing that we often read about is the issue to do with the passage of a year. So that, you know, one does not pay zakah on any sort of asset or thing that they own until that passage of a year has been established. So perhaps, first of all, you can explain that. And then secondly, obviously, I think given the nature of people's affairs nowadays, it's sometimes very difficult to determine when that point has started, when a passage of a year has taken place, etc. So how should people deal with this issue?
No. In reality, many a person feels that if, for example, I inherited £1 million today and my zakah date is on the 1st of Ramadan or the 10th of Ramadan, etc., whichever date it might be, take note. Whenever one reaches that amount of nisab, then one should record that date. It could be in the middle of August, it could be in the middle of Rajab or Sha'ban, etc. It has just become the norm amongst many person that they calculate their zakah in the month of Ramadan, as was the practice of many of the Sahaba. And that's a good thing, alhamdulillah. Nonetheless, your date could be any time in the year. As soon as you reach that threshold, that minimum, then that's the date that you're supposed to record. And every year that that date comes upon you, you need to pay your zakah. Nonetheless, with regards to your question, what's the easiest, the simplest, the best method for me to calculate my zakah? Then the answer is as follows. Take this day in the year, let's say it's the 1st of Ramadan. Whenever the 1st of Ramadan comes upon you, total up and look at your assets, whatever assets you have. Whether you had it for a year, whether you had it for 2 days, whether you had it for a month, makes no difference. As long as you were above the threshold for 1 year, then it does not really matter when you had any and all those specific types of wealth, etc. Example. Brother Sulaiman has been above the threshold of the nisab for the entire year. And 24 hours before his zakah calculation, which is on the 1st of Ramadan, he, for example, inherited or he did a business deal and he's made a profit of £1 million. So he's got this £1 million now through this business deal and he's only got it for about 24 hours. Will he add it in his zakah calculation 24 hours later on the 1st of Ramadan? The answer is yes. Why? Because the yearly cycle is to do with your being above the threshold. It's not necessary that you need to have every piece of wealth, every cent, every dollar, every pound for 1 year. In fact, if the Sharia said that, Sulaiman, Brother Naseem, you need to take a calculator and you need to work out and keep record of every cent in your business till, etc. That's going to be taklif that we cannot ever take. So we pick a year, a date in the year. Whenever that date comes, whatever you have, even if you had it for an hour, 2 hours, as long as you were above the nisab for the entire year, then you pay zakah on that amount.
Okay, and the last question maybe in respect to this is that, if somebody falls below the nisab, i.e. in the course of a year, maybe 8 months of the year they were above the nisab, but they had ins and outs, etc. But then something went wrong, they've fallen below the nisab, for example, then what do they do then? Everything resets, presumably.
Everything resets once you reach the nisab again. So let's say, for example, the brother usually calculates his zakah in the month of Ramadan. A few months later, he went bankrupt and he had absolutely nothing. Or he just went below, he dipped below the nisab. Once you dip below the nisab, then you begin a new date. Once you reach the nisab threshold again, record this date. Let's say, for example, it's in the middle of Dhul Hijjah. So the 10th of Dhul Hijjah or the 20th of Dhul Hijjah is his new date. Whenever this date comes again upon him, then he will calculate zakah and pay his zakah on that date. And this is the opinion of majority of the scholars, whereas maybe a safer opinion, an easier opinion out there for the people, inshaAllah, would be the opinion of the Hanafi scholars, and that is, if as long as at the beginning of the year you were above nisab, and at the end of the year you were also above nisab, then it makes no difference. It's irrelevant whether you went below nisab, above nisab, makes no difference. You work out at the end of that year. If you were above at the beginning and you were above at the end, alhamdulillah, you calculate your zakah on that amount. And that's the easier opinion, or rather that's the easier opinion when it comes to calculation, and it's the safer opinion, inshaAllah.
Inshallah, jazakumullah khair.